A heat wave settles over the county, the kind where the air feels heavy, even standing still. And somewhere out behind your house, your flock is in real trouble. And most people watching this have no idea how close that trouble actually comes every single summer. A chicken cannot sweat, not even a little. Every defense she has against heat is built around two things: panting with her beak open, which moves air across the moist surfaces inside her, and holding her wings slightly away from her body, which exposes a little more skin to whatever breeze there is. That is the whole toolkit nature gave her. No sweat glands, no real backup plan. And a chicken's normal body temperature already runs around 105 to 107 degrees, which means she is operating closer to her own danger zone than you or I ever are, even on an ordinary day. Once the air temperature climbs into the high 90s, and especially once humidity climbs alongside it, that thin margin disappears fast, and a bird that looked fine in the morning can be in genuine danger by early afternoon. Most folks respond to this the way the modern world has trained them to respond to every problem. They look for something to buy. A fan for the coop, a misting system, an automatic cooling gadget with a brand name and a price tag. Some of those things genuinely help in the right circumstances, and I will be honest about that as we go. But the core knowledge of how to bring a flock through a heat wave safely does not require a single dollar spent or a single watt of power. And it has not for as long as chickens have been kept on farms in this country. My name is Silas Miller. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My family has kept chickens through Pennsylvania summers. Humid, heavy, the kind of August afternoon that sits on your chest for generations, without an electric fan in the coop, without a misting system, without spending money on cooling equipment of any kind. Today I am going to show you exactly how this is done, starting with understanding how a chicken's body actually works. Because once you understand the mechanism, every piece of the method makes sense, and you stop relying on gadgets and start relying on knowledge that does not break down or need replacing. Let me start with the dust bath, because it is the single most underrated tool any chicken keeper already has, sitting right there in the yard, costing nothing. You have likely watched your chickens dig a shallow hollow in dry dirt and flop down in it, kicking dust up over their backs, looking for all the world like they are simply enjoying themselves. They are doing something far more functional than that. A chicken's feathers carry natural oils that, in cool weather, help insulate and waterproof her. In serious heat, that same oil becomes a liability. It can trap heat against the skin rather than letting it escape. Dust bathing works the oil and old skin debris out of the feathers, which helps the bird shed trapped heat more effectively. But the real cooling power of a dust bath in a heat wave is not the dust at all. It is the dirt underneath. Soil, even a few inches below a sun-baked surface, stays measurably cooler than the air temperature, often significantly cooler, because the ground above it has been absorbing and dispersing heat all day, rather than radiating it back the way open air does. A hen that digs down into shaded soil and settles into it is pressing her body against a surface that may be 10 or 15 degrees cooler than the air around her, and she is doing exactly what her instincts evolved to do in hot weather. Your job, then, is simple and free. Make sure there is a patch of loose, dry dirt or fine sand somewhere in deep shade, away from direct sun for the bulk of the day. If your run does not have a naturally good spot, maybe it is all packed clay or all in full sun. Dig one. A shallow depression, 2 or 3 feet across, loosened up with a shovel or a hoe. Set under whatever shade you have, a tree, the shaded side of the coop, a tarp stretched between 2 posts. That is the entire cost of this method. An hour with a shovel, and the patch will serve your flock every single hot day from now on. Now, water. And this is where most people get the placement and the temperature wrong without realizing it. Chickens often will not drink water that has gone warm, especially on the hottest days, which is exactly backward from what they need most, since heat stress increases their water requirement significantly. A water source sitting in full sun by mid-morning is already warm by noon, and a bird that will not drink warm water is a bird quietly heading toward dehydration, while her waterer sits right there, technically full. Set your water in the deepest shade you have, not just partial shade, full shade, the kind that stays cool even at midday. If you can drop a block of ice into the waterer or a frozen water bottle, the melting ice keeps the water meaningfully cooler for hours, and it costs you nothing but the freezer space and a few minutes. In real heat, refresh the water 2 or 3 times through the day rather than once in the morning and forgetting it, because a bird that finds warm, stagnant water will often simply stop drinking rather than push through it. And that is precisely the wrong direction at precisely the wrong time. One more water trick that costs nothing and works remarkably well. A shallow dish or tray of cool water, just an inch or 2 deep, set in the shade for the birds to stand in. Chickens shed a meaningful amount of body heat through their legs and feet, which have almost no insulating feathers at all. A hen standing in a shallow, cool dish for even a few minutes is cooling herself directly through some of the most heat-exposed skin on her body. You do not need a pond or pool. A shallow tray, the kind you might use for mixing concrete or feeding livestock, filled an inch deep with cool water and refreshed through the day, gives every bird in the flock a place to stand and cool down on her own schedule. Now, shade and airflow inside the coop itself, because this is where a poorly designed structure works directly against the bird living inside it. The coop should never be the only available shelter during the heat of the day. Many keepers assume the coop is where birds should be at all times, but in real summer heat, the coop, especially a smaller, more enclosed one, often traps heat worse than the open shaded run does. Let your birds choose. If they want to spend the heat of the day under a shade tree, under the raised coop itself if it sits up off the ground, or in a shaded corner of the run rather than inside the coop structure, let that be their choice. They generally know where the cooler spot is better than we do. For the coop structure itself, the placement of ventilation matters more than the amount in many cases. Heat rises, which means ventilation placed high on the coop walls, near the roof line, lets the hottest trapped air escape continuously, while ventilation low on the walls mostly just lets in air that is already hot from sitting near the ground in full sun. If your coop only has low vents or windows, that is worth correcting. Even a simple, well-screened opening cut high on a gable end, covered with hardware cloth to keep predators out, will let genuine cross-ventilation develop and carry trapped heat up and out rather than letting it bake the birds below. Keep bedding thin in summer, no more than an inch or 2, rather than the deeper bedding you might use in winter for warmth. Thick bedding holds heat and moisture and contributes to the same ammonia buildup I have talked about on this channel before, which only compounds the heat stress a bird is already dealing with. A lighter layer in summer, cleaned more frequently, keeps the coop floor cooler and the air inside cleaner at the same time. If your coop has a metal roof, and many do, a coat of light-colored paint on the exterior, white especially, reflects a meaningful amount of solar heat rather than absorbing it the way a dock roof does. This is a one-time cost of a can of paint and an afternoon, and it measurably lowers the interior temperature on a sun-baked roof for as long as that coat of paint holds up. Now, feeding, and this is the part most people get backward, because the instinct in any kind of distress is often to offer more food, when, in a heat wave, the opposite consideration matters more. Digesting food, especially protein-rich food, generates internal body heat as part of normal metabolism. A chicken's own instinct in serious heat is to eat less, which is her body correctly trying to reduce that internal heat load. And this is not a sign of illness during a heat wave specifically. It is a normal, protective response. Rather than fighting that instinct, work with it. Shift feeding to the cooler parts of the day, early morning and evening, when birds are more inclined to eat anyway, and when the metabolic heat from digestion will be generated during cooler hours, rather than added on top of peak afternoon heat. Offer cooling, hydrating treats during the hottest part of the day, instead of heavier feed, watermelon, cucumber, other high water content produce that a flock will happily eat and that adds hydration rather than digestive heat load. Now I owe you the honest limits, because this is a welfare matter, and I will not let good information about prevention substitute for clear information about recognizing real danger. Dust baths, shade, cool water, smart feeding, and good ventilation handle the great majority of summer heat a flock will face, including most genuine heat waves, and they do it for free. But there is a point past which these preventive measures are not enough on their own, and recognizing that point matters more than any single method I have described. Watch for labored, open-mouth breathing that does not ease even in shade. Watch for a pale or discolored comb and wattles, where the normal bright red fades toward a duller, washed-out color. Watch for lethargy, a bird standing apart from the flock, not moving much, not responding the way she normally would. Watch for staggering or any loss of balance. Any of these signs means you are past prevention and into active heat stress that needs immediate intervention, not a wait-and-see approach. If you see those signs, move the bird to the coolest shade or indoors immediately. Wet her legs and feet with cool, not cold, water, since cold water on an overheated bird can cause its own shock to the system. Offer water with electrolytes if you have them on hand, or a small amount of plain water immediately, and watch her closely. If she does not improve within a short time, or if symptoms are severe, this moves beyond what home care alone should handle, and getting her to a vet familiar with poultry, or at minimum consulting one by phone, is the responsible next step. I would rather you act quickly and turn out to have overreacted than wait and lose a bird that could have been saved. And I will say plainly that on the very worst days, genuinely extreme heat beyond what your region normally sees, especially combined with high humidity, where panting alone cannot move enough air to cool a bird effectively, even a well-prepared free-range flock benefits from additional measures. A solar-powered fan, run off a small panel and battery setup like the one I have shown on this channel before, costs little, requires no connection to the power grid or a monthly bill, and can move real air through a coop on the days when passive ventilation alone is not keeping pace. I am not against every tool. I am against unnecessary, expensive tools standing in for free knowledge that handles the overwhelming majority of situations on its own. Now I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters most. Think about what we have just walked through. A patch of shaded dirt, a shallow dish of cool water, ventilation placed high instead of low, feeding shifted to the cool hours of the day. None of it requires a purchase. None of it requires a power source. And all of it works with the actual biology of the bird, rather than trying to brute force a solution with machinery. The instinct to reach for a product when an animal is struggling is understandable. It comes from genuinely caring about the flock and wanting to act. But the chicken industry, and the broader pet and livestock supply industry alongside it, has a strong incentive to position every problem as one that requires a purchased solution, because that is how the industry makes its money. A fan, a misting kit, a specialized electrolyte supplement with a brand name on it. These things have a place, and I have told you honestly where that place is. But the foundation of keeping a flock safe through a heat wave was understood by farmers long before any of those products existed, and it remains just as effective today, for the simple reason that the chicken's biology has not changed, even though the marketplace selling you solutions to her biology has grown considerably. My grandmother kept a flock through Pennsylvania summers her entire life, without a single piece of cooling equipment beyond a shovel for digging a dust patch and a good eye for where the shade fell through the day. That knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. It simply stopped being the thing anyone profits from teaching you, while a fan with a brand name on the box very much is. So here's what I want you to do before the next heat wave arrives, or right now if one already has. Walk your run and find or dig a patch of loose dirt in deep, reliable shade. Move your water source into full shade if it is not already there, and plan to refresh it through the day rather than once each morning. Set out a shallow tray of cool water for standing. Check your coop's ventilation and see whether your openings sit high or low on the walls, and correct that if you can. Shift your feeding schedule to the cool hours and offer water-rich treats instead of heavy feed during the peak heat. Then watch your flock through the next hot day with this knowledge in mind, and tell me in the comments below, have you ever lost a bird to heat? Or come close to it? What part of the country do you keep your flock in? And what has worked for you that I have not mentioned here? I read every single comment, and the methods people have worked out in their own climates, their own coop designs, their own flocks, teach the next person more than any single video can on its own. Next time, since we have been talking about keeping animals comfortable through the heat, I'm going to show you how my family manages the barn and the larger livestock through the same kind of heat wave, the shade structures, the water systems, and one old trick involving the placement of the barn doors that moves more air through a hot barn than most people would believe possible. It is the natural extension of everything we covered today. Until then, dig the shade patch, move the water, watch your flock closely, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.